I'm in Salem, Ohio, the childhood home of legendary DJ Alan Freed, the guy who's credited with coining the term rock and roll and significantly advancing integration through great R&B music. Founded in 1806, Salem's early settlers were mostly Quakers who strove for an honest, quiet, hardworking, inclusive society. Salem takes its rich history very seriously, as evidenced by their sprawling historical society. So I knew I didn't want to miss that. They have several buildings and displays, a research library, a gift shop, and even trolley tours. We'll explore the Historical Society in another video, but for this video, I'm focusing on Salem's anti-slavery past and how it might have rubbed off on a young Alan Freed. This building is called Freedom Hall. It was built in 1987. It's a replica of Liberty Hall, which was a place where abolitionists would meet in secret on the second floor to discuss how they could best help African-American runaway slaves in the Underground Railroad here in Salem, Ohio. Not only was Salem, Ohio instrumental in the abolitionist movement, it was also the place where the first women's rights convention was held in 1850. That's right, Salem, Ohio, the little Quaker town with big ideas. From the Historical Society, I headed out to try to find a couple of houses I knew were on the National Historic Registry for once being part of the Underground Railroad. I couldn't find one particular location, so I just drove around and was really pleased to discover some beautiful Salem neighborhoods with lovely historic homes. Eventually, I found what I was looking for. They hid escaped slaves on their flight to freedom before and during the Civil War here. It's an amazing history in a shameful time. It's pretty cool, though. During my search for Underground Railroad markers, I came across this marker in honor of Strawder Brown, a former slave who settled in Salem after the Civil War. The story goes that while a slave in Virginia, Strawder Brown met a Union soldier named Franklin H. Bentley, who was from Salem. Brown gave the soldier some good tobacco, and presumably Bentley told Brown about Salem, Ohio and its abolitionist stance and the Underground Railroad operation. So after the war, a 50-ish-year-old Strawder Brown, finally free, rode his only possession, his sweet horse Jenny, all the way to Salem. And there he built himself a little shack and started making baskets to sell. He worked really hard, and he made Salem his home. It seems this former slave created a happy, productive life for himself. He lived to be around 100 years old, passing on in 1913. I took some time to think about Mr. Brown and tried to comprehend what his life was like. I wondered if there was a moment when he sat in his Salem yard, took a deep breath, pondered all he had been through, and sighed with something like relief, maybe? What could that have felt like? I also pondered how one seemingly small gesture in life, like an exchange of information and some good tobacco, can lead to a whole new path. In 2007, 94 years after Strawder Brown died, Salem honored him with this historical marker, and they named a street after him. Salem sure seems to have embraced Mr. Brown for, quote, personifying the American dream, end quote, even after his terrible beginnings. And for that, I felt glad. What a life he must have lived. What a story. So as I pushed away my ever-present wish of having a time machine once again, I was determined to find the street where Alan Freed grew up. As I drove around the quaint city searching, I couldn't help but wonder if the city's legacy rubbed off on a young Alan Freed, who moved from Pennsylvania to Salem, Ohio with his family in 1933 when he was 12. Yes, Alan Freed grew up on this street, 4th Street in Salem, Ohio. And I think it's really interesting that Salem, Ohio was so instrumental in the abolitionist movement because eventually a young Alan Freed would be raised here. He would go on to be the guy who took R&B music, put it on the radio for white kids to listen to, and he had a lot of pushback from the establishment who didn't want that to happen. But he didn't care. He loved the white kids, he loved the black kids, he loved the music. He continued to play it no matter what pushed up against him. You see, it's sad to say, but you can't tell a rock and roll story without talking about race. Black music was called race music back in the 40s and 50s. It really was. It was great R&B music, and it didn't get played on white radio or white jukeboxes or in white neighborhoods, but he's the one who coined the term rock and roll to describe that great R&B music that was now being played to a wider audience. While there were other DJs playing R&B music in the early 1950s, Alan Freed brought passion and enthusiasm to the music and to his profession, and he worked tirelessly to promote the music he loved in films, stage shows, artist development, and promotion, and television. He was a significant personality in the early days of rock and roll, and I just think he deserves a very prominent place in music history, in spite of the fact, or rather, especially because, his career came to a scandalous and tragic end. Find more content on Alan Freed and Salem, Ohio on Rock Travel Show. And please take a minute to like and subscribe.